Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the hearing. Appreciate all of you testifying today on a very, very important issue, but I think from your testimony and the questions you're seeing from the members of this committee, it's certainly not an easy issue. You're talking about schools. I happen to have been through the Marine Infantry Officer course, a recon school, SEER school. These are very difficult schools that most men have a hard time with because it's about a tough profession. I think Sergeant Major LaHue, when he was talking about this recently, the Marine Corps Sergeant Major put it very succinctly. In regards to infantry, there's no trophy for second place. You perform or die. Serious, serious discussion here. And I'm a Marine Infantry officer, but like General Neller mentioned, I'm also someone who has 3 daughters, 3 teenage daughters. All their lives, my wife and I have been telling them that if they work hard, earn something, that they should be able to do anything anyone else does. Anyone. So I support the opportunity for women to serve in any capacity in the military as long as the standards are not lowered. And I think you're seeing that as a consensus here. But one thing that hasn't been talked about enough, I want to talk a little bit about the process. And we know that Secretary Panetta allowed the services to request an exemption, and after thorough study with hundreds of Marines and men and women serving, gave their all to put together a study. Secretary Mabus, I have to tell you, I've been very disappointed in terms of the process, how you've dealt with the Marine Corps' desire to look at this really difficult issue. As soon as the Marines published their study, within 24 hours of this 1,000-page study, you came out and said you saw no reason for an exemption. Did you read the study?
Senator, what I said, I had said countless times since the time that Secretary Panetta and Chairman Dempsey had done it, had set us on this path, that the presumption was that we were
you said, I do not see any reason for an exemption the day after the study was published. Based on what?
The conclusions.
Did you read the study?
I've read the study.
Did you read the study before you stated that?
I had read the conclusions that the Marines drew from the study prior to that, and those conclusions, which were based on averages and not on individual Marines.
Let me ask another question that related to the study, and Senator Gillibrand just talked about it. You then implied that the women Marines involved in the study weren't the top flight Marines. And General Neller, I think, just said that wasn't the case. And then in public radio, you essentially told the American people that the Marines weren't looking at this in an objective manner. You said, quote, it started out with a fairly large component of the men in the Marine Corps thinking that this is not a good idea and women will never be able to do this. When you start out with that mindset, you are almost presupposing the outcome. I think the only person presupposing the outcome in this entire process was you. General Neller, were you presupposing the outcome on this after millions of dollars and hundreds of Marines to put together this report? Is that what you were doing, sir?
We were all waiting for the results of the study, but I think we'd been out and visited and we had seen some things, but there was a lot of analysis that had to be done, and it was a short period of time. But no, I was not presupposing it.
Let me just make another point. I think, Secretary Mabus, for whatever reason, you've seemed agitated, annoyed about what the Marines have been doing, about their study, your public statements, and yet they were the only service, as far as I can tell, doing the hard research on a very, very difficult issue. To me, it seems like you might want to think about complimenting the leadership of the Marine Corps as opposed to implying that they weren't taking this seriously. They were clearly taking it seriously. In my view, they were probably the service that was taking it the most seriously. Let me ask one final question that relates to this. On January 1, you directed the Marines to come up with a detailed plan to integrate boot camp within 15 days. Now, I'm a little biased here, but I think it's commonly known that the Marine Corps probably has the best basic training of any service in the United States military, probably any service in the world. I've been on this committee for a year. I don't think I've seen a more outrageous or ill-advised order from a service secretary to tell the Marines that they're going to take boot camp, which has been honed and put together for the benefit of the American people over decades, and you're going to tell them and order them to get a detailed plan in 15 days? Is that even remotely possible? And why did you issue such an order when nobody on this committee thinks that that was remotely possible to integrate boot camp? Did you read the Kassenbaum-Baker report committee, unanimous committee?
Senator, it was not only possible, but the Marines met that. They had been working on this for months and years, and they always look at how boot camp is organized. And you'll be happy to know, Senator, that they met that deadline. They fully briefed me on January 14th and came
That's
up with
because the Marines are a can-do organization.
The Marines are an incredibly capable organization. I'm in awe of the Marine Corps and of individual Marines and the sincerity and the service and the work that they have done on behalf of this country. And as I said in my opening statement, it's the greatest honor of my life to lead the United States Marine Corps and the United States Navy. What we have come to, because the Marines did such a good job of coming up with this, is the Marines have developed a very deliberate plan, a very ordered plan to begin to look at lessons learned and how they can more fully integrate boot camp to give us better Marines, which they have done. And as Commandant Neller and I have talked about several times, boot camp has changed over and over and over again, and always with the same aim, and that is to make better Marines, to make a better Marine Corps and have a more lethal, more effective Marine Corps.
How does your order square with the Kassenbaum-Baker unanimous committee recommendation on the integration of our boot camps in the military?
Well, Senator, I looked at all sorts of reports, but I also have drawn on my almost 7 years.
It doesn't, does
this
it? I mean,
job.
it directly contradicts the unanimous recommendation of that committee, right? Just for the record.
I think that's a completely irrelevant point, Senator.
It's not irrelevant. General Neller, do you think, in your professional opinion, having 14 days, because you were probably, well, mate, you probably didn't take the day off on New Year's Day because you got an order and you're probably working on it. Do you think having 15 days to put together a detailed plan to integrate Marine Corps boot camp, an issue that has been studied, debated on one of the most incredibly important institutions in the, not only the Marine Corps, in my view, the United States military, do you think that was a reasonable request? Sounds like you did it, which doesn't surprise me. That's the Marine Corps ethos. But was that a legitimate request to do that within 14 days? One of the biggest issues I'm sure the Corps as an institution has been struggling with for years? 14 days to do that?
Senator, what we did is we briefed the Secretary on how we do recruit training. And in part of that discussion, I believe, I'm not going to speak for him, but he understands and has a better view of why we do it the way we do it. And as he stated, part of that discussion is that we're always trying to get better, and we will continue to look at ways that we can further improve recruit training. So
you're not answering the question, General. You're not answering Senator Sullivan's question. Repeat the question.
Was it a reasonable order, given the years and years and years that the Marine Corps has been looking at this and studying this, and committees like the Kassenbaum-Baker unanimous committee said it wasn't a good idea, to have 14 days to come up with a, quote, detailed plan to integrate Marine Corps boot camp? I just think it was outrageous, but I'm wondering, in your professional military judgment.
when we briefed on the 14th, we did not provide a plan to fully integrate recruit training, but talked about how we do conduct recruit training.
Well, it's unfortunate. Your time has expired. Secretary Mavis, this would have been a lot easier if you hadn't called in the press immediately and debunked what many of us view was a legitimate study without even reading it. And I don't believe that you read a 1,000-page document in one day. I'm sorry, but I don't believe it. And so your handling of this issue has really complicated the whole situation for those of us who fully support the integration of women in the military. It was done in a peremptory, go to the media first fashion. General Neller, I would just like to ask, do you want to, for the record, articulate the concerns that you have about this entire evolution?
Senator, there's a lot of concerns that we've talked about, and General Milley articulated them. There's a lot of things we don't know. I would tell you that one of my biggest concerns is that the perception, which is totally inaccurate, that the Marine Corps doesn't value the service of the females that serve in the Marine Corps. As I stated earlier, we're looking at how we can increase the number of females in the Marine Corps. This is about combat effectiveness. This is about health and welfare of the force. This is about talent management, putting every Marine in the place where they can best contribute. So we've been given an order to integrate. We have, we believe, a fully detailed plan to integrate. We're going to give every Marine the opportunity to compete. We have the standards that we think will allow them to be successful.
I asked if you had concerns, General.
I have concerns about retention. I have concerns about injury rates. I have concerns about propensity to re-enlist, career progression. I have concerns about what's going to happen if the numbers are low, which they probably will be at the beginning. But I think the plan that we have, again, I have concerns about things I don't know what the answer are going to be to, Chairman, but I think we have a plan in place to where we can monitor that. And I would ask that we continue to be required to come back to this committee and report on how we're doing on implementation.
Senator Reed.